Don't cry for me, Argentina.
Ridiculous.
The truth is, I never left you. All through my wild days, my mad existence, I kept my promise. Don't keep your distance.
I.
So, as you may have guessed, we are reviewing today.
Maradona.
Exactly. Diego Maradona, the documentary. So Wikipedia tells me that Maradona is an American singer-songwriter who rose to fame with the album Like a Virgin before winning the Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Drama or Comedy for playing Evita in where she sung famously "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina."
Sure. I mean, look, I don't do any research. How am I supposed to know? I
thought that was a good joke, and it ties in with Argentina as well.
Well, see, if you were to ask me to describe the movie, I'd be like, Maradona's a Pokemon, and when he evolves, his hair goes boop, boop, and gets bigger and bigger. But then when he gets Saru, the hair goes down, and when he gets happy, it gets fluffy. And he wears really pretty hats on top of it, and I would like a hat, please.
So we are recording this podcast a few days after Maradona sadly passed away. And yes, people talk a lot about Maradona, but they do not talk about his hair and how it reflects his mood and how it gets bigger and bigger throughout his career.
Also, he only has one move. He's a Pokemon who literally learned one move and then never learned anything else. Headbutt. All he does is headbutt. He's like, why kick when I can just use my head, my big fluffy head?
There's one goal where the ball is like 2 foot off the ground, but he still heads it. It's like, it seems like a lot more effort to get down that low to head it. I know you're small, but even still, it seems like you're just showing off.
Also, no disrespect to Maradona with the Pokemon thing or anything.
Yeah.
It's like, he is lovely and iconic, and I'm a good Brazilian baby who respects my football players. However, he is a Pokemon.
His hair is amazing. The only hair I've seen like it is Ivan Campo, who used to play for Real Madrid and Bolton. So, Isadora, I know there'll be people here who've never heard of Diego Maradona or only vaguely know about him. Could you give a short summary of who he is to our listeners?
Diego Maradona is he was first discovered and started playing in a team when he was 15. He comes from an extremely impoverished portion of Argentina, and he gained fame playing in Spain and was then transferred to Italy, where he became an icon. And by that, I mean a hair icon, but also a cocaine icon, depending on what you care about.
And he won the World Cup with Argentina.
Yes, he did win the World Cup for Argentina. I genuinely appreciate his story and the manner in which he pulled his family out of poverty, but I do also think that it's important to consider that, once again, sometimes being the person your family depends on monetarily at the age of 15 is not good for a human psyche.
Yes, so the film goes through Maradona's childhood, and he grew up in what was essentially a shanty town, like no running water, no proper toilet facilities, like himself and his family of, he was the youngest of 5 kids and the only boy, which meant that he was always spoiled. But living in essentially what was a shack. And he was a football prodigy and got his first professional contract. And by the time he was 15, he was able to move his family out and into an apartment. And it reminded me how a lot of people from low-income environments, their entire family relies on them as a source of income. Like, it's a massive amount of pressure. Like, they're not just thinking about themselves, they're thinking about all the people around them. And if I fail, not only do I fail, but my mom goes back to living in the slums.
There's also a big, okay, the way my parents have explained it to me, and if there are any Brazilians watching, I mean, other than my mother, because my mom's our only person who actually watches this.
She is the only person who watches it.
I'm lying. It's you.
We have the stats. And Tatiana Lemego is our only listener.
But it's great. I love the love. She finds you so handsome. It's embarrassing, but in a good way. So, my mom was telling me that, like, basically, like, most men in Brazil will oftentimes play football, but in terms of like a career, normally the people who make their career into playing football are often like children from lower socioeconomic statuses because the like middle and upper class Brazilians play other sports as well. So for example, like I never really played football in when I lived in Brazil. Like I played tennis and volleyball.
Hmm.
Like it's just not as much of like a thing that you like if your parents have any money, you're probably not becoming a football star. Do you know
Yeah,
what I
fair enough.
mean? Like
It's kind of
you need like the goal and the
yeah.
like will to like do
It's
anything to get it.
it's kind of similar in Ireland. Like football is more of a working class sport, with the exception of Limerick. Rugby is middle class sport, and Gaelic football is kind of all levels, but it's bigger in rural Ireland than urban Ireland. Um, yeah, and I mean, for a lot of these people, it's their only kind of way out of poverty, and it was for him. It's interesting. He grew up in Argentina, which was a socialist country under Eva Peron, and I will sing again. You watch me.
Mm, mm, mm,
um, so yeah, under
mm.
Peronism, it's funny to think that even with a socialist country, the people were so poor. Like, Argentina was one of the world's 11th richest country in the 1930s, but by the time like Maradona was born in the 60s, people were still living in these shacks, really.
But
Um,
like I think that people have a conception of South America like when people see these kind of photos, I think they think like, oh yeah, South America, it's all shanty towns and stuff. But the thing is that poverty looks different in a lot of nations. Like I think that in Ireland, the conception that people have of poverty is like, oh, like this homeless person on the street, which
mhm.
is horrible. But there is like a major difference in what poverty looks like in a Latin American country versus what you might see in a more Western European Union country. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
just the quality of poverty.
I think
And
the floor is higher in Ireland. Like in Ireland, yeah, like you can be homeless, but there are shelters available. And kind of the worst thing that could happen is that you'd have a kind of a council house in a not particularly nice area, whereas wouldn't have all the amenities, like would have a fridge, would have a freezer, would have like a washing machine. Whereas if you live in Latin America and other kind of poorer parts of the world, those things aren't guarantees at all.
like I stand by that Latin America is a fundamentally wonderful place. Like one day I would really hope that like my children get to experience like Latin American culture and Brazilian culture and get to live there at some point in their lives. But like we are also countries that are post-colonial and there is a decent amount of government corruption, a lot of utilization of our funds in incorrect manners by government officials. So when you take all that in consideration, like it
Yeah.
adds up to shanty towns that Maradona lives in.
Okay, so
The
Maradona
movie.
is a teen prodigy. He plays for Boca Juniors, who are like still the biggest Argentinian football club. Plays at the '82 World Cup with Argentina. They don't do particularly well, and then in '80, he moves on to after the World Cup. He moves on to Barcelona for a record transfer fee. So this stage, he's already the biggest player in the world, and he goes to Barcelona. He's there for 2 years, but has an injury, so doesn't play particularly well. So in 1984, he moves on to Napoli. And Isidora, what happens when he arrives in Napoli? For people who don't know Napoli,
Everything.
it's Naples on the west coast of Italy.
So Napoli traditionally didn't have a particularly good team. It was also considered to be one of the lower socioeconomic status portions of Italy.
Yeah.
However, they were very excited to have Maradona. They were like very excited, like a little
Yeah.
too excited, in my opinion.
They were crazy excited. The only time I think of this player this good going to a team this average is Juninho joining Middlesbrough in like the mid 1990s. Like there was no reason that Maradona, the best team in the world, would go to Napoli except that he'd had a massive falling out with Barcelona. He was injury prone, and yeah, like Napoli had won two cups in their entire like 100-year history.
And I remember
Um,
it was quite controversial when they got him because it was Napoli. Like Napoli was one of the poorest areas in Italy, and yet they were buying one of the most expensive, actually at the time, like the most expensive
he most
player in
expensive
the
player,
world
yeah.
for their team. But I will say, like, I would actually be very interested in seeing. Okay, now I'm just being a mega nerd, but I'm like, I really like to see how much Maradona's like popularity positively influenced the economy of Naples. Do you know what I mean? I can't help but think that him being there and the team becoming extremely popular actually put in a decent amount of revenue
Yeah.
for the area.
And they did become very successful under him. But it's funny, like at his first press conference, they're like, is the only reason Napoli, this like really mediocre team, was able to afford you is because the Camorra, who are like the mafia in Naples, have been like financing it. And the head of the club is like, how dare you say that? I'm not even going to dignify that with an answer. Whenever someone says that, it's always It's always like a complete tacit admission of guilt, and he
Oh,
like
of course.
he gets the journalist out of the room.
I'm like,
Oh,
classic move, sir, classic move. But I'm also like,
no.
sir, is the mafia not like? There are areas of Italy where the mafia isn't like, crazy heavily involved, but I'm like, everything I've ever read about Napoli would indicate
Mm.
that mafia involvement would be likely. The whole 10 minutes of research I did, which was like Napoli mafia, Google. Ah, yes.
Yeah. And when he moves to Napoli first, he has some difficulty in the first couple of weeks that he's there. I didn't realize at the time Italian football and football throughout Europe was really rough. Like you saw some of the crunching tackles he gets when he joins Naples.
You mean some of the good football. I'm
Yeah.
just like, sir, the reason I don't even watch football nowadays is just that I feel like it's become extremely like, and I mean, this is horrible for me to say this, like the person who's like in love with Excel sheets, but I'm like, we've mapped the fun out of football.
Yeah, like you watch some of these fights from the 80s and it's like people are properly fighting. Like they're going in full like Eric Cantona style kung fu kicks at each other. Like it's an actual fight.
Because it's like a lifestyle. Like we haven't, and okay, this is bad because I'm sure that like I shouldn't be sitting around encouraging fights, but it's like the passion of the game, man. I feel like I'm literally the most exceedingly pacifist person. I'm sitting here being like, fight two, fight two, fight two.
So there's a massive class divide in Italy between the north and the south. So like the north was traditionally like Venice, Milan, like they're the trade centers, they're now like the fashion centers of the world, and the south were traditionally very poor. So like some of the chants were calling the from the opposition fans were calling Naples, cholera sufferers. Um,
Yeah, they treated like people from Naples like they were from a third world country.
yeah,
Like they were an inferior portion of Italy. And I'm just sitting there being like, even in a country as cool as Italy, you guys still find something wrong with you. Sips
yeah,
tea.
I
Sits
know.
there like,
And there's a low-key racism as well because like the southern Italians have darker skin.
I know.
Yeah.
Problematic issues in every country,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah.
I'm
I mean,
like,
I know it happens in every country. Like I know in America and in Ireland and the UK, there's like an urban-rural divide, and we talk about cultures and we talk about rednecks, but it seems to be particularly bad in Italy.
yes, but I mean, like, also to be fair, it was like Italy in the 80s, and I will say, like, I assume, okay, it's completely assuming just like from a, vibrant Latin culture,
Hmm.
uh, people in the 80s weren't very, like, PC with their commentary, as far as I can tell. Like, look, not to say, at one point, Maradona in the locker room is literally doing like a chant about how they're gonna go see whores after they win. I'm just like,
Yeah.
these people are not concerned with
Yeah.
pissing someone off.
Yeah. And later on, he's like telling his daughters how to say like, fuck you, Milan, and she's like 3 years old. She's like repeating it.
Yeah, it's like, look, Italy in the 80s. I'm just gonna be like, were they like exceedingly concerned about making sure people were happy? No, no, sorry, no.
So after a kind of rocky start, Maradona starts to play really well. In one of the matches, he scores a goal, which causes two heart attacks, and the news anchor is like, "This was, quite difficult for local people, but probably worth it in the grand scheme of things." Like,
I
there's
mean, I
no
love it.
question that it's a worthy trade-off.
I feel like it's okay. I just feel like it's such a cultural thing that like we were watching this and I was just nodding like, yes, yes, that sounds completely valid to me. Like, please move on, madam. Like, impressive goal. Yeah, heart attack. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool, cool.
So he becomes increasingly successful and becomes like this messianic figure. Like you'll
And his
see
hair becomes
it
bigger.
becomes bigger. You'll see the hair becomes like a halo around his head, and then you'll see like murals on the wall of like the Mother Mary holding a baby Jesus, but the baby Jesus has just been graffitied over to be a baby Maradona.
See nothing wrong with that, obviously.
Yeah. Um, so this is where his problem starts to come in because he's so successful, everybody loves him in Naples, everyone wants a piece of him. He gets into the party scene big time, and if people haven't heard of Maradona's extracurricular activities, could you enlighten them, Isidore?
You've never seen Parks and Rec, but there's this character in Parks and Recreations that's named John Raffio, and I'm pretty
Oh,
sure
it's
that at
Ben
some
Schwartz,
yeah, Ben Schwartz. I'm hoping I'm
Sonic the
saying
Hedgehog.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'm saying this right. But there's one point where he like walks into like a party and he's just like, cocaine. I'm not even doing that right, but it's like iconic. Like he's Ben Schwartz is probably like my John Rufy, whatever his name was in the show. But you know I'm bad with names.
Yeah.
But I just like that meme is Maradona. Cocaine.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of other things that you could assume that like a young, attractive, rich football player would get into in Italy's in the 80s, but mostly cocaine.
Yeah. So the Giuliano mafia family hooks Maradona up with cocaine, which is interesting considering that 30 years later their American cousin couldn't even book the 4 seasons in New York. But boom. That joke is immediately going to date.
I mean, yes, but also the 4 seasons, that incident was iconic, and I still like to read about it sometimes. Did you know that there's actually a group that's petitioned, somewhat jokingly, but in somewhat all seriousness, to have it recorded as a historical site in the United States?
It should be. It should be. It was like the end of an era.
I think it's really cool.
So as well as getting into the drug scene, and he was really into the drug scene. So the matches would be played on a Sunday, which I find kind of weird. Sunday's Mass day, but I guess it was after Mass at like 3:00.
It's a type of religion.
Yes, it is a religion. Like the entire city is there. So he'd like party until Wednesday, and then he'd like detox for the rest of the week. But he also had like several affairs with different women, and again, like women were throwing themselves at the time, but he wasn't particularly.
But he had a wife that he said he was in love with. Like that's the thing.
Yeah, and also, how did he? When people would go to the media saying, "Oh, I slept with Maradona," Isadora, how did he respond to his wife when she was reading this in the paper, watching it on the news?
Oh my God, he would cry and tell her no.
Yeah, he's like, "It's not true, they're lying."
But he's literally like crying, and I'm like, sir, like, look, cheating is a bad thing, but I also feel that it's like if you're going to do something like that, you should also like fundamentally be able to own up to the errors you make. And I'm just sitting there being like, Pokemon Maradona, like, what are you doing, sir? Like, you need to put your big boy pants on and tell your poor wife that you have cheated on her because she deserves better, sir. She has given you 2 very cute children. He seems nice.
Yeah. Chris Rock has a skit about like being famous, and he was like, all these famous people come out with affairs, and people are like, oh, if I was famous, of course I'd be faithful. But he's like, you don't realize when you're famous, like people are literally throwing themselves at you, and like most people don't have any idea of that, and like it doesn't excuse him at all. But I don't know. Do you think that it's an added challenge for him that you have all these football groupies that are going around throwing themselves at him?
No. Like, I'm sorry, that's like, I'm sure that at like his young age, considering that every single attractive Italian woman was like after him, like, sure, it might be difficult. But if that's going to be what you choose to do, you have a choice to get married or not, or a choice to get divorced. Like, I think that if you're going to go ahead and just like continually cheat on your wife, like, should you have gotten married in the first place? Should you have just enjoyed your 20s and slept with every single hot woman in Italy? And then eventually, maybe in your 40s, when you were out of the game, you could get married. You know what I mean?
So at this stage, he's already married to his childhood sweetheart, and she's pregnant. She turns on the news, and what does she see?
Baby.
Yeah, not her
named
baby.
Diego.
Yeah, there's a baby, Diego Jr., that another woman has mothered, and she's claiming to the Italian press that it's her baby. So this suddenly escalates things. And what does Maradona do again?
Not mine, honey.
Exactly, denies.
No, it's fake.
Yeah. Which was not only hard on his wife, but also on like the woman and the child. Like it's like the Steve Jobs. Like Steve Jobs didn't admit for years that like Lisa was his daughter. Yeah, like Maradona was not a saint, and he'll be the first person to say that. But I think it's important just when you look back on these historical figures to take in all elements of them.
But also, like, okay, I will say that one of the things that's prone to it, because like. So this is speaking completely from a Brazilian perspective because my parents like naturally follow Brazilian football. You know what I mean? And one of the things that they tell me is like a lot of the major players in Brazil, like there'll always be news reports coming out about like how many girlfriends they're having on the side or how many children they've fathered and stuff. Yeah. My parents will be like, it's not a good thing. It's not in any way, shape, or form justifiable, but it's also like these young kids who don't have like formal educations, or maybe like they don't have parents who are like constantly enforcing rules or teaching them what like a good relationship looks like, and they have all this money and all this power and all this privilege suddenly, you know what I mean? And I feel that when you have that amount of money, power, and privilege, if you have no one kind of like guiding you how to utilize it, then it can become a very difficult thing where you do a bunch of hurtful things, but you've never like gained the maturity. Like that's the thing with Maradona. Like when you see his actions, it never seems like he matured past like 19.
Yeah, see, what I think is that when you become famous, you stop maturing. So I think the reason that like Leo DiCaprio is going out with all these 20-year-old women is that he was 18 when he was in Titanic, and he never matured beyond that, because after that he was Leo DiCaprio, and whatever he wanted, he got. So I don't think it makes sense for him to go out with a woman in his 40s, because she's at like a literal different stage of her life. You know, she has matured, whereas he's kind of stuck in a state of arrested development.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I think that's like a good way to describe Maradona. Like he is in a situation where he is a 20 to 30-year-old man. Like, we see him up until like his 40s, like who is behaving as if he is still a teenager, because
Yeah.
he has never had, like, once he became a famous teenager, he never had to hear no.
Yeah, and also all his friends, all his teammates are similarly people who became famous in their 20s or in their early 20s or in their teenage years, became professional footballers, and have like
And they all
never had to
love
work an
him.
office job, you know? Like they've
Everyone
never had to
gives him
mature.
anything that they want. So like why would you have to mature? Like why would you have to like think about the repercussions of your actions if everyone lets you do anything that you want to do?
Yeah, do it with impunity. So back to football, we're coming up to the greatest moment of Maradona's career. It's the 1986 World Cup in Mexico. And to give a bit of background to this, in 1982, which country did Argentina fight?
Britain?
Yeah, so they fought Britain. There was a
I got it
Falklands War.
right.
You got it right. This is impressive.
Ugh.
So if anyone doesn't know, the Falklands are like these tiny islands off. Sorry, they're these
As an aside,
tiny
I do
islands
actually
off
know about the
Argentina.
Falkland. I do actually know
Yeah.
about the Falkland War. I'm just extremely bad at dates. So I was like, wait, what date was that? Was it the Falklands? Was it the Falklands? Was there
Yeah.
some other time that the UK like screwed over Argentina? Like,
Yeah. So like no one in the UK had heard of the Falklands. It was just one of these like tiny islands that were left over from their colonial days. In fact, it's near where Robinson Crusoe was found, like tiny islands, almost uninhabited. But in 1984, Argentina was like, "Oh, we're going to take that." But then Britain under Thatcher, they had lost a lot of public support with the breaking the coal miner strike in 1982, 93. So this happens in 84. And you're like, what? Great! This is a chance to like, get rally behind the flag and get some jingoism going. So they completely destroyed the Argentinians. Like they demolished them,
I
and it
heard
was
about it on The
yeah,
Crown season 4.
you did, yeah. It was like an embarrassing defeat for Argentina.
I'm
Like
just sitting there being like, oh yay, Britain, you beat Argentina. Sips tea, like,
mm.
definitely a hard campaign for you guys. Like that was really necessary, Britain.
Yeah. I feel like Britain almost like they felt like they needed this because they'd lost so many countries in the 1960s. They're like, oh, we're going to keep this one though, and like bring the British Empire back again and make Britain great again.
You know,
Take back
Britain,
control.
Britain, another child that became famous when they were 15 and never had to emotionally mature.
Yeah, never to mature, and like still
I
haven't.
mean, shade
Yeah,
on the British, but also they're the British, so like.
yeah, yeah. They're like, what was my golden era? I think when I was subjugating 1/4 of the world's landmass.
Look, I'm from Latin America. I'm never going to be a big fan of European colonialism, and I'm American, so whenever I hear a British accent, I deeply want to throw tea in a harbor. So, combined.
So 2 years after that war, in Mexico, Argentina are drawn against England in the World Cup quarterfinal, and yeah, like Maradona is fairly brutalized by the British. They're pretty rough. But then he goes on to score the most famous goal ever in world football. It's the hand of God. If someone has been living under a rock for the last 50 years and has never seen the hand of God,
I
what
actually
is
didn't
it?
know what the hand of God was.
You've never seen the hand of God? Okay, describe it someone who
But
is
it's
blind.
Argentina. I'm Brazilian. Why would we pay
Okay.
attention to other countries?
Okay, what is the hand of God?
Okay, so in football, you're not allowed to use your hands,
Yeah,
but
that's why it's called
Maradona's like,
football. Pro tip.
Maradona is small, like a cute small, but a
He's tiny.
small.
He's like 5'5".
Yeah, so he went up to try and hit the ball, but he still wasn't going to hit it, so then he used his hand to bonk it.
Yeah, he put his hand just above his head because the goalkeeper's coming in as well, so the goalkeeper would have saved it otherwise. So he put his hand above his head like that, and then the linesman, for whatever reason, didn't see it, and it went in, and all the other English players were like, handball, like, going up to the referee, and the referee's like, no, it was a goal. And yeah,
Was
most
the
famous goal ever.
referee just taking taking a moment to suck it to the British? Yes, but I've also heard that
Quite
like
possibly.
the British crowds are literally the worst in football. Like
Yeah,
I've heard they're the
yeah.
rudest player. Like they're the
England,
rudest.
yeah.
Like
So we'll specify it is England that they're playing, and English fans are the worst in the world. Nick Hornby, a massive Arsenal fan and writer of Fever Pitch, said that if you took the worst 1,000 fans from every club in Britain, you'd have the England fans. And it's so true. The England fans are so bad with like violence and hooliganism that when a major tournament is on, they literally put thousands of fans on parole. So the fans will need to stay in England, and every day they'll need to present to their local police station with their passport to prove that they're in England and not like in France, like at the major tournaments, wrecking the place.
Jesus.
Yeah.
But what if they want to go to France and wreck the place? Freedom of movement in the EU.
Well, not the EU for much longer.
I know. Well, they screwed themselves over with that one. So
Yeah, I think they're officially out of the EU now. They're just in that transition period. So when he scores a goal, the hand of God goal, they cut to one of the Argentinian commentators, and the subtitles are so good. It's like your man is screaming into the microphone. He's like, "Sorry, I want to cry," and he describes Maradona as a cosmic kite. What planet did you come from?
He's a cosmic kite.
No one has ever called me a cosmic kite, and he says, "Thank you, God, for Maradona."
We have Jesus, we have the Holy Mary, we have Maradona.
It's so good. And also these Latin American men when they're celebrating, there's no kind of like homophobia. Like they are kissing each other, they're hugging each other. They are very comfortable in their sexuality.
I am very used to like people just approaching me in Brazil and like kiss me, like not on the mouth obviously, but like everywhere else on the face is fair play. I actually sometimes actually struggled a bit like transitioning to like America. I mean, to be fair, Californians are pretty chill. But particularly when I came to Ireland, realizing the lack of comfort people had with hugs at times was a bit strange to me. But I understand that's a cultural norm. But then I was seeing like these like Italian men, and I was like, yeah, I get that. I too randomly am just like glomp on my friends.
Yeah, it's one of my theories why coronavirus spread quicker in Italy and Spain because people stand closer to each other when they're talking and they like hug more and they kiss more and they interact more. Whereas in like Northern Europe, we're more kind of standoffish and we won't go near people.
I mean, East Coast America as well. I remember when the first time I like tried to hug one of my East Coast friends. I mean, nowadays I ask people if they're like comfortable with hugs. Like I actually do ask. But 18-year-old me was from California and Brazilian and just didn't realize people weren't cool with hugs. So like I went to hug like my East Coast friend. I remember her like flinching and I was like, I feel like I did a bad thing. I apologize. I will not do that again. Sorry.
So Maradona dribbles through the entire England team, scores a second goal, they win 2-0, they get to the semi-finals, get to the final, and they win. And when Maradona gets to the World Cup, he's like, my World Cup.
He always holds the trophy. He doesn't
he's like a child. He's like, no, I know share.
That is literally him. He's like, it belonged to me. It stayed in my house. It was me. Yeah. He didn't even score like the winning goal, and he's still like, but it's mine. I'm the team captain. Mine. It's mine.
And every summer, even after the World Cup, he gets really chubby because he is not training at all, and he's like eating whatever. So like,
and cocaine.
Every summer is like him and his personal fitness trainer trying to like get him to get his heart down, get his fitness up, and like, there's no Fitbits. The personal trainer is literally looking at his own analog watch and has his hand on Maradona's carotid and it's just measuring the heart rate like that, which is amazing. It's so old school. So he comes back and he is like an even bigger star than ever. And they describe it as Maradona. He refers to himself in a third person sometime, like Caesar or like Cristiano Ronaldo. But they describe it as there's like a distance between like Diego, who's this kind of like shy kid from the slums, and then Maradona, who's this like larger than life personality that he's created to deal with all the media attention. Do you think that if you're in the spotlight, you need to have that kind of persona? You need to have something to separate your personal self from your outside self?
I don't even know if it's something that you have to do your personal self versus your outside self. But for example, like you have to present what you think is the best version of yourself. Like it's like
Yeah.
an interview, but you're stuck in
Hmm.
a perpetual interview. You have to be constantly selling yourself.
Yeah.
Like you,
He needs to seem constantly confident, like.
yeah. And it's not like it's not a real version of him, but it is
Mm,
like the best selling version of him because that's what people do when they
mm,
interview. They're trying to sell
yeah,
themselves and he's trying to sell himself.
yeah. And people love it, like,
Yeah.
Like later in his career, people called him like arrogance and stuff. But at the time, like, he was the best player in the world. And why wouldn't you feel good about yourself? Um, yeah. But like, it was really hard for him. Like, like the paparazzi were constantly surrounding him. Like, anytime he left his house in Naples, he was just swarmed by fans, by the paparazzi. So it was so difficult for him to live a normal life. Um, So he goes to Naples, and next year he wins the Scudetto, which is like the Serie A or the top football league in Italy. And what's the atmosphere like in the dressing room, Isadora?
Oh God, it's just like a bunch of men in their underwear dancing and being like, "We're going to go sleep with sex workers after this. Everybody, we're the best." And I'm just like, smells like the '80s.
It smells exactly like the 80s. One of the chants, because like Maradona is their talisman, they're so obsessed with him, is this players are like singing this is my heart is racing. I saw Maradona and I fell in love with him. Which I'm not
See,
sure is made by a female fan or a male fan, but fair play either person.
yeah, fair play. I mean, real talk, like all those fans loved them, so fair
Yeah.
play to them.
So like he goes out and there's like almost riots in the street. They are so happy. Like even there's like old ladies are celebrating. There's little babies who are dressed up as
They have little
Maradona.
tambourines. They're like, boop, boop,
Yeah, the little
boop,
tambourines. It
boop.
reminded me when I saw Pope Francis in Philadelphia at the World Meeting of Families in 2015. There was like a baby dressed up as a pope, and I was like, "This is amazing, Pope
Baby
baby,
Pope, Pope baby,
big
which
Pope,
is also like
Pope baby."
Obama got Pope baby. Remember the Pope baby with
Yeah,
the Pope mobile? Obama saw him.
that's so
It's
good.
really
It was so
cute.
good. So this is the high point of his career. He wins the same trophy to get out next year with Naples, but then after that, he's like, "No, I'm kind of pretty much," and he wins the UEFA Cup as well, which is like the second biggest cup in Europe. And at this stage, he's like, I've pretty much done everything I can at Naples. I'd like to move somewhere smaller, get more personal because he seems to not like the attention all the time. Like it seems a little bit cloying for him. But our Naples going to let him go just like that.
No, and also I feel bad for him because it's like he's also getting older. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
really do feel like they purposely were making him play past his prime because he became the
Mm.
mascot of Naples. But it's like
Yeah.
at some point he probably should go down to like an easier
Mm.
league. Like he's getting
Yeah.
older. He's no longer in his prime.
Yeah, and he had sciatica, which is severe nerve pain in his legs, and he had to get nerve injections, which were tremendously painful every week, just
And
so
that's
that he would be able
horrible.
to play. Yeah, like he was really wheeled out, like he was a mascot, like he was Mickey Mouse and not not a person. So like between the club presidents and the mafia there who were supplying his cocaine, they didn't want to let him go. Um, but this all changes in the 1990 World Cup. So the 1990 World Cup is Italia 90, first World Cup Ireland's qualified for, and we're watching a movie for that, and it's like a guy in an Irish accent be like, "And Italy have beaten Ireland in the quarterfinals, and will go on to play Diego Maradona's Italy in the semifinals." I was like, "That's us. We're the team that was beaten by Italy. It was our
I was
high
just
point."
like I was just like that's what you're proud of the World Cup, I see, sir. Waves my Brazilian
No,
flag in the corner, being
no,
like, "Ole."
no. We drew with England and we beat Romania on penalty. We beat
Well,
Romania
drawing
and we got
drawing
the
with England is respectable.
yeah. Also, that
Always
like
draw or
Italian
beat
90s
your
really meaningful.
colonizer.
Yeah, Italian 90s really meaningful to a lot of countries. Like Cameroon was the first African team to get to the quarterfinals of the World Cup that year, and before that, people like had these outdated colonial notions that like Africa were savages, and of course they couldn't beat like a Western white team. And Cameroon performed really well, and teams like Ghana have followed in their footsteps since then. So like Argentina performed very well as well. They got to the semi-finals, and they were playing Italy in Naples. And what does Maradona say to the people in Naples?
If I remember correctly, he says like, actually, wait, what does he? He was just like, I love Naples, but I'm playing for Argentina, like basically, like,
Yeah.
or that
But who
every
does he want them to
Naples.
support?
Oh, he wants them. Oh, sorry. Okay, he wants them to support Argentina. He's like, I've supported Naples for so long. Like, you guys, if you guys love me at
Yeah.
all, you should be
Yeah.
supporting my country.
He's like, I've done so much for you, and all the northern people think you're hicks who have cholera. So, really, you should be supporting Argentina. And this does not go down well in
To be fair, some of the Naples
in
people,
Italy.
some of the Naples people were digging it. Like Naples was like, "Oh yeah, Argentina shirt on, let's do this." But then the rest of the Italians were like, "We will stab you."
So the match goes to
Aggressively.
penalties, and Maradona steps up for the penalty, and if he scores, Argentina will probably be through. Italy will probably be out. But if he misses, Italy might have a chance to get through. What happens next?
Maradona scores because, of course, he does.
Yeah, of course he does. And overnight, he becomes public enemy number one. The only modern example I can think of this is when Cristiano Ronaldo got Wayne Rooney just red carded in the 2006 World Cup, and he was hated in Manchester afterwards. You could buy like dartboards with his face on it. So he becomes literally the most hated man in Italy, ahead of like politicians,
dictators, like literal dictators.
dictators. Like it was crazy. So overnight, Italians turn against him, and not just people on the streets. The judiciary turns against him. So all this time, people have been turning blind eyes to his cocaine use. But just overnight, they start tapping his phone, finding out that he is taking cocaine. He's got his mafia connections, and he ends up with being arrested, and ends up being drug tested and being found positive for cocaine. So because of his what was found in the wiretaps, he gets a 1 year suspended sentence. So he can't play, and he also can't play football for 1 year because of his positive drug test. So what does it do to Maradona?
Oh, it kills him. He like tells his wife, "We're packing up, we're leaving, we're going away."
Yeah, so it crushes him. Like when he came to Italy, there was like 80,000 people in Naples, like there to greet him, and he slinks away in the night like a common criminal. It's really sad. And that's kind of like the end of his high point of his career. Like it's all downhill from there. Like he was disqualified from the '94 World Cup because he took steroids to try to bring down his weight. He became kind of massively obese and checked into rehab in a psychiatric hospital for his cocaine problems.
Which, to be fair, I think he did need. Like, I do appreciate that he went and got the care that he needed.
Yeah, no, he 100% needed. And someone described his life as a life both tremendous and terrible. What do you think of that statement?
I think, like, not to quote another book, but I think he's just a great and terrible beauty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Back in WB8.
Well, yes, but also Great and Terrible Beauty is a trashy Victorian rom-com book series that I used to read as a teenager.
Okay, well,
but I know that it's.
I thought we were going high art, but it seems like we're going very, very low.
You know what? This is the girl who also thinks that like poems from holes are real poetry. Like, you aren't dating me for high art.
Yeah, I just found it profoundly sad. Like I didn't know how. I mean, I knew his kind of dizzying highs, but I didn't know how quick he fell and how far he fell. It just seems really sad that a man who was so worshipped in Italy would be so hated. And I guess it goes to show the damage that like kind of drug use can do, and non-stop partying and like having no kind of limits in your life. Like I feel like you really just need like a mentor or a father figure. Like there's a similar English player, Paul Gascoigne, who completely fell off the wagon in his 20s because he fell into alcoholism. And if Alex Ferguson, the Scottish manager at United, said that if he had Gascoigne in his team, that he might have kept him, he might have kept him on a straight and narrow. Do you think if like Maradona had a father figure, he would have like taken him on board, or would he have just been still very ego obsessed?
I think that part of Maradona's problem was that he went to Napoli that was in love with him. I think that
Yeah.
his coach, up until he became the most hated figure ever, never imposed any limits or regulations on him. Like his coach 100% knew, and the president of Napoli 100% knew, like the team
Well, yeah. If you don't turn
knew.
up for training until Thursday, they probably know what you're doing.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like everyone knew what Maradona was doing. There were photos everywhere. And the reason no one imposed anything on him was because he was beloved and they were indulging him.
Mm.
But that's not the job of a coach. Like
Yeah.
they should not have been letting him, like not even that they shouldn't have been letting him have fun, but they should have been
Mm.
telling him that he, isn't perform like if football is your job, you need to take your job seriously, and he wasn't.
Yeah, like if I was, didn't turn up for work 3 days a week and rumors are going around I was having mad cocaine parties, like I think it would be my job for my boss, both from a professional and a personal standpoint, to, rein me in, have a meeting. But I guess because he was so famous and he was still playing very well at the time, they never felt the need to do that.
Yeah, but imagine how good he could have been playing if someone had just put their foot down and been like, you only get
Yeah,
cocaine on Sunday.
I
Sunday's
know.
cocaine day. Sunday night you can have cocaine after
Yeah.
the football game, and the other 6 days of the week you have to show up to training, baby.
Yeah, it reminds me of like the Northern Ireland and Man United player George Best, who again had like massive alcohol problems and liaisons with sex workers, and I guess there's very few limits with him at the time. Like he was one of the best players in the world. He felt like he could do what he wanted, and he just didn't have those limits in place. So he ends up retiring at 26, and you always wonder what would happen if he hadn't done that, what he could have achieved.
Yeah. No one no one is better than having a few limits imposed on them. I think that anyone, like if you gave any person like complete free reign, they would probably start abusing the system.
Yeah, I think
And
everyone needs
particularly
limits, and I think that's
particularly
the message
someone
of the
so
film.
young who got so much money so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a tragic story, but it seems inevitable in retrospect. Um, so the film is Diego Maradona. I'd recommend it even for not football fans, by the director of Amy, the Amy Winehouse documentary, and
Um,
Senna, the racing car documentary.
yeah. Why are you, who's watched the Amy Winehouse documentary, Cormac? Like who
Well,
has seen that? Who has seen that
well,
documentary?
it
Like,
won the Oscar for best documentary, and the reason I'm calling Diego Maradona the film a flop is because it didn't get an American release, so it meets a
mm,
very narrow definition of flop in my book,
just like,
which is
sir,
why we're reviewing.
I have not watched the Amy Winehouse movie, but as a good Brazilian child, I have watched the Senna documentary, which was like chef's kiss. Who cares about Amy
So
Winehouse? Senna is iconic.
yeah. So in summary, is this movie a bop or is it a scam?
Is a bop, but it's a sad bop.
It
Also,
is a sad bop. It was very fun for the first like half of it, and then it's sad towards the end. So sad bop, but
his
I
hair gets
definitely
smaller
recommend it
and
too.
smaller after the midway.
Yeah, he's like a
Because he gets
cartoon
sadder
character.
and
Like his
sadder.
when he's happy, his hair is really puffy like an afro. When it's sad, it gets all flat. And he's like, oh,
Yeah, when he was doing his interview at the end, he has like his big lip out and he's like all cryy. And I'm like, honey, your hair is so flat. You're not taking good care of yourself. You're not using good conditioner, baby.
oh, poor Maradona.
Isadora
Okay.
gets saddest over his hair, obviously.
Oh, I think that's a wrap. So next week we're reviewing Lolita. We'll see you then. Bye bye.
Yay, bye bye.